This is probably one of the easiest interactive cards you will ever make. At least it is in my opinion. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this pull tab interactive card. Actually, I have two of them for you. The set that I'm going to be using today is the freshly picked bundle from Concord and Ninth. It has a small stamp set that I'll show you in just a moment, but this is the die that you would be purchasing in the bundle. It has all of these pieces to create a basket full of either apples, pumpkins, strawberries, peaches. If you have a small circle die, you could even do oranges. So all of the components are here for you to create this fun interactive piece. Here is the base piece that is going to be your mechanism for your pull tab to slide up and down. I'll go into detail about that more in a little bit, but here is the small stamp set included in that bundle, which is filled with great sentiments to add to your pull tab and basket. To save a lot of time in this video, I have gone ahead and die cut out all of my pieces that I want to create for my two cards. This is the basket. There are three pieces to it. We have a base, the interactive piece, and then the top piece of our basket. I die cut mine out of wheat cardstock, but any color would work here. But I want to add some color to this a little bit. So I'm bringing in chocolate truffle from Gina K Designs and just adding a little bit of color to the bottom of that basket. I'm going to do the same thing on my other one. So a lot of these steps are going to be repeat as far as adding shading to everything, only because I want to stay consistent, and it was a lot easier to just do everything at once when it came to adding my color. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say this is an easy thing to mass produce, but if you have all of your pieces die cut out and ready to go, it is a lot easier to just add the color all at one time as you're going through your pieces. I plan on giving these to some of my son's teachers as he has brand new teachers this year entering middle school. I'll be making a card using apples and also pumpkins. So these are the pieces I'm going to need for my apple. I die cut some from cranberry cardstock from Concord and Ninth and poppy cardstock. Now the one with the poppy cardstock, I'm adding a little bit of cranberry ink just to one side using a mini blending brush. For the cranberry ones, I'm going to bring in the chocolate truffle and just use the leftover ink and maybe pick up a little bit extra ink. I don't want to go too brown. I just wanted to add a little bit of shading to that. For my pumpkins, there is going to be a smaller piece that I'll need to add to the center to really make it look like a realistic pumpkin. And for these, I die cut the pumpkin pieces out of marmalade cardstock and adding some of that poppy ink to the edges. I'm also going to add that poppy ink to the really small pieces. Now this one, I would suggest maybe using a silicone mat or something to put these small pieces on. It would be a little easier to kind of have that grip to the surface versus my glass mat that I'm using. For the stem for my pumpkins, I die cut these out of, I believe it was parsley cardstock, and I'm adding either parsley or clover ink. I get the two kind of interchanged. And here I'm adding a little bit of that color again, just to give it some dimension. I did wise up and grab myself kind of this sticky mat that is, I'll have that link down below. And that's just helping me hold these really small pieces, especially these small leaves that I will be adding to the stem for my apples. Now, you don't have to add shading to all of your pieces. I did take a little bit of extra time to do that just because the rest of the card, once these are all complete, the rest of the card comes together really quick and easy. So I thought taking the time to add some color and dimension to my items in my basket would just really help step up the card a little bit. These are the stem pieces for the apple that I die cut from wheat cardstock, and I just have a jewel picker that's helping me pick up my leaves and add it on top of there with some liquid glue. Now you can see there's this little round circle on the bottom, and I think that's brilliant to have that on there because that's going to help us adhere that behind the apple. So gives us a little bit more room to add our glue to or your other adhesive you're using. After I have all of my leaves attached to my stem, I'm going to add some liquid glue and add them behind the apple. So you can see here by adding that dab of glue, it attaches really easy behind the apple because there's that little bit of extra space for us to apply our adhesive. Then I'll do the pumpkins next, and I'm going to show you how that extra piece just goes right on top in the center to make it look like a realistic pumpkin. And I think these turned out so super cute. After I have all the centers added to the center of my pumpkins, I'll then bring in the stems and add those. And now there are two different stems. So that way your stems are facing either direction. And I did die cut out some of each just to have it mixed up a little bit in my bushel. Also in that die set is a die where you can have the slice of an apple or part of it open up like that. So these were really cute that I'm going to add to the front of the card as well. So I die cut the base piece out of some cream colored cardstock and the top piece out of poppy. And on the stamp set included in the bundle is these little seeds. There's like 3 seeds. And I am just going to stamp these down. I'm not going to put this in a MISTI tool because they're really small, and honestly, it's probably easier this way. I went ahead and attached that top piece on with my liquid glue, and then I'm stamping those seeds in VersaFine black ink. So I'm making sure to get a really crisp impression the first time, and I don't have to worry about trying to reline it up in case I didn't stamp properly the first time. The VersaFine is kind of guaranteeing me a perfect stamped image. In these pieces, I'm also going to be adding a stem to. So I had a couple extra. I made sure to count out enough so that I can add that behind these pieces as well. For our bushel, we have a few pieces here to work with to kind of build up our bushel and add some dimension to it. So we have our main base piece that I added some ink blending to. This is our top piece to kind of give that lines in the bushel that I'm adding the liquid glue to. And then we also have 2 smaller pieces that are going to layer on top to give this some dimension. I die cut mine out of that wheat cardstock, but this would be really cool in maybe some gold mirror or even silver. There are 2 different styles of handles that you can add. I decided to go with this one that's kind of going to lay in the front of the card or hang down in front of the bushel. Sorry. So I'm adding a little bit of liquid glue to the back of that. This one I'm going to have kind of off onto the right hand side, and my other bushel I'll have it where it's more on the left hand side. For the interactive piece, so I have 2 pieces here. These are included in the die set. This piece has it actually on the die that it die cuts in there the word glue. That is the only place we're going to add our glue. Then we have this tab piece that's going to be our tab we pull out that I die cut from white cardstock. And all you need to do is slide those 2 tabs into those slots. Once I have that in there, you can pull it up and down to kind of get it used to it and working. Super simple. All you do is slide it into the slot, and that's going to be able to have our pull tab and our message revealed. No thinking, no folding, no measuring. Just slide these tabs right into the slots. So super, super simple. Now that our interactive pieces are done, we are going to go and build our bushel. So the first one I'm doing is the apples, just adding a little bit of liquid glue to the bottom of the apple and also the very top of that bushel. So I'm going to start with 3 on the bottom here, just kind of having them about halfway up, or that top of the bushel is about halfway up on the apple. Then I'm going to add a couple in the background. So I have 2 that are going to be here, and I'm kind of tilting them to make it look like they're really kind of stacked in that bushel. And for the last apple that I'm going to place on top, this is going to be the one that goes at the top of my tab. So I have that base piece that has the etched words glue in it, and I'm kind of hovering my bushel over that so I can find the perfect placement of my apple at the top. So there you can see how it's going to look like it's just a stack full of apples, but really there is going to be a sentiment on here that I'm going to stamp using that stamp set. So I'm pulling out my tab all the way up, making sure that I'm leaving myself enough space that this sentiment is going to show up. I'm going to bring in that VersaFine ink again, just using a small block, and I'm going to stamp that right on that pull tab that's going to come up. So this says, "Thanks for all you do," which I think is going to be a great card to give to the teachers. Now I'm taking my liquid glue and I'm adding it only to the area that says glue, and actually giving myself a little bit of room there so if it does kind of squish and spread out a little bit. We do not want adhesive touching where that interactive portion is going to be. Otherwise, we're going to have problems trying to pull this out. Now, the first couple times doing it, it is a little bit tight. Is a little bit rough kind of coming out. But once you work it and get that paper kind of smoothed out on the edges from just repeating that, pulling it up, it goes a lot smoother. Also included on that stamp set is this little sentiment that says, "Pick me." So I'm going to stamp that on the top of my apple that's going to have the pull tab on it, just to indicate to the recipient that there's something hidden in here. So hopefully that kind of prompts them to pull this up. Now I'm going to repeat those same steps with my pumpkins, which I think is super cute. I love all things fall themed. So I'm really loving the apples and the pumpkins. I am in full fall mode over here. I have my candles lit. I am all ready for the cooler temperatures and beautiful colors. Now, once again, I'm adding 3 pumpkins to the bottom there, right at the top of the bushel. And then I'm going to have 2 behind. Now, I did notice that my leaves were getting in the way quite a bit. I wanted to show more of the pumpkin, and I was finding that I had a lot of leaves going on. So I'm going to just take my scissors and trim off some of those extra leaves so that I can see more of the pumpkin behind. I'll bring in that interactive piece, the base piece, kind of hover my bushel over it so I can find the perfect placement of my pumpkin when that tab is all the way down. Then I can pull the tab out and I'm going to add a sentiment to this so that I'm getting these sentiments in before everything is completed on the card, which this is a lot easier to do this way. Normally I forget to add my sentiments. Then I'm going to push that tab all the way back down, add that liquid glue right to where it says glue, and just hold that down for a few seconds to make sure it's adhered really well together. And now we have this fun pull tab coming out of that bushel of pumpkins. So now for the rest of my card, I'm going to keep the rest of this pretty simple. I went ahead and die cut out this piece from the Friendly Florals die set. It's kind of this elongated oval shape. And I'm adding a little bit of parsley ink to the bottom, and then I'm going to have it fade off into the white. I'm using a flat blending brush from the Stamp Market. All of the supplies are going to be listed down below in my video description and on my blog as well. Now for my other card, I die cut once again that kind of elongated oval from the Friendly Florals die set, and this time I'm using Oceanside ink from Concord and Ninth. Once again, kind of having that blend off to fade into the white of the cardstock. Then I'm going to add a sentiment to the top of these. This is off of the Friendly Florals stamp set, and I'm stamping this kind of in that white area in the VersaFine black ink. This one's going to say "So Thankful," and then I'm going to bring in the green piece and I'm going to stamp at the very top "Handmade." VersaFine ink can stay wet for a little while, so make sure that this is really dry before you flip this piece over. And I'm adding foam tape behind both of these pieces to pop these up on the front of some white cardstock that I have cut to 4¼ by 5½. I thought about using colored cardstock, but I really loved this shape behind my bushel, and I loved just having that little bit of color. Problem with white cardstock is I tend to get ink on it. So I'm just bringing out my mono eraser to kind of help buff off that little spot of ink that somehow ended up on the front of the card. Now for my other card, I once again added that to the front and somehow got ink on there. You might not be able to see it in camera, but there was a little spot of ink on there. So it happens all the time to me. This eraser has saved me so many times. Now, at first, I added liquid glue to the side of the bushel, and whenever you're adding adhesive, you just want to stay out of the way of that pull tab mechanism. I started with liquid glue and added this to the front of the card, but my second card, I decided to add some foam tape behind it. Once again, making sure to kind of keep out of the way of those tabs so that we can still pull our message out. And this worked a lot better. This was easier for me to get my finger behind it and be able to pull that up. So after I attached my apples here, I went back and carefully pulled up my bushel of pumpkins. Thankfully, it hadn't completely set. It still ripped the paper behind it. But once I added the foam tape behind this bushel of pumpkins, I'm going to reattach it in the same place. So nobody is even going to know that I changed that up. Now, after I get this all added, I still wanted to have that pick me for my bushel of pumpkins. Problem was is that because I added that extra piece to the front of my pumpkin to make it look like a pumpkin, it didn't make it easy to stamp on. So after I attach my bushel, I'm going to take my clear block with that pick me sentiment and I'm going to curve it just a little bit to kind of curve around my pumpkin. And I'm adding that in that VersaFine ink there. So hopefully that will indicate to the recipient that they can pull that up to reveal a message. Now I also have an extra pumpkin and that apple slice that I'm going to add to the front of the card on each one. Now this seriously had to be one of the easiest interactive cards I have ever made. And keep in mind, just because there are fall themed items in here doesn't mean you can only use it for the fall. You could do strawberries, you could do oranges if you have a small circle die. You could do blueberries, change up the color of your cardstock. You could also, maybe you have some die cut flowers you could add to this. So, really, you could use this throughout the year. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I will have all of the supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Here are a few other videos I think you might enjoy.